Welcome home to USA Global TV and Radio, a place where dreams take flight, with authentic storytelling, diverse perspectives and meaningful conversations, where global stories unite and bridges are built beyond all borders. Discover world-class education, entertainment, hope and inspiration. Together, we're building bridges worldwide. Subscribe to our channel, USA Global TV. Download our app, USA Global TV. Be our guest or join our team. Visit usaglobaltv.com. Thanks to our founder and executive producer, Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Music score by Yeffy Tang from Cloud Road Music. Voiceover artist Mike Porter. Creative direction by Paul Garcia. USA Global TV and Radio, your home for global connection. All rights reserved. This video and its contents are the exclusive property of USA Global TV and Radio. Unauthorized use, duplication or redistribution in any form is strictly prohibited.
Hello and welcome to USA Global TV and Radio, where we are proudly celebrating our 4-year anniversary. Thank you to each and every one of you who have been with us since the very beginning. This is a very special time, and I'm very grateful. I'm Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck, and our show today is Iconic Women. And I'm very grateful to have someone coming back as a repeat guest from some of our other programs, which is always an honor. And to me, it signifies that we are giving people a place to share their story where they feel comfortable. Today's guest comes to us from Mickey Mickelson and Creative Edge. Thank you, Mickey. We really appreciate you. Our guest's name is Samantha. She goes by S.E. Tschritter. I hope I said that right. Samantha is a multi-award-winning author. And when you hear about her latest accomplishment, which is really tremendous, I think you are really going to be appreciative that she's here today. I know that I am. She specializes through her work and through her lived experience in grief and loss. And so through poetry and fiction and her ability to communicate an experience that really resonated with me and hopefully will with you as well, she is shining a bright light on certain darkness that some of us have experienced in our life. And she's doing it through the written work and through her ability to share her story on TV shows and podcasts like today. Let's welcome her to our program. Welcome. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. Hi, Jacalyn. Hi, everyone. How are you guys doing today?
Hi. So I last saw you on our Judgment show, which was December 31st. And I was really just amazed at how you were able to take such personal experiences that were overwhelming in and of themselves. Like when you put them all together, it's hard to even comprehend. And I was really just grateful for you to have the courage and the transparency to be here to do that. So I know you've written over 40 books and you've won a lot of awards. I want to get to that a little bit later in the program because we're talking about iconic women. So to me, iconic means standing the test of time. And so I think you are an iconic woman. And what I'd like to ask you is, how does that make you feel?
I'm not used to it yet. I'm still learning. I think all of us are iconic women. All of us have the ability to change the lives of the people around us for the better, to make a positive impact. And so my reach has been broadening lately, and I've been able to share my story with more people, which is just a really humbling experience for me.
Thank you for sharing that. And Samantha, you have been in the spotlight a lot throughout your life in different capacities.
Yes.
And some from what you shared were on the high highs, and then some were really where you were just totally and utterly being judged. And so now you're on a different path. And so when you look at that progression, what does it feel like to be a public figure and be in the spotlight?
Like I said, it's humbling. I'm, still getting used to it, but my heart is for people to understand that they are not alone in the grief that they experience. Unfortunately, I know what it's like to see a spouse in handcuffs. I know what it's like to have to call 911 on a spouse, not for a spouse, and to see those red and blue lights in your window, wondering what neighbors are going to think, and just dealing with shame and guilt and fear and all those pieces. I've been there and I've walked in the dark. And that's what I talk about in my latest release, The Prodigal Son, which we talked a little bit about the day before it launched. And it's been on Amazon bestseller list ever since. So I'm excited to talk to you about that. But my heart's desire is for other women and other people to know that the things that they experience are not things that they're going through alone. Everyone's story is unique, but there are similarities in the things that we experience.
Absolutely. Congratulations on the success
Thank
of your
you.
book. That's outstanding. What a wonderful feeling.
Okay.
Something that comes up for me is, and I realized this in my own journey, that we as people, we specifically as women, we can do certain things with our makeup, with our hair, with the way we look. We can take a journey in life that gives us the highs and the lows, but at the core, we're still the same person. And we even see this with A-list celebrities that are in Hollywood. They went from this to having all the money and status, then they lose it. And it's the same person, but in a different circumstance, but yet their behavior can change based on the circumstance. So I'd like you to share a little bit about what it was that motivated you to write this book, because basically what you did was you had no facade. You had no filters. You just said it the way that it is.
I did. So for those of your guests who are listening who haven't heard the story, who didn't listen to that Judgment show, I wrote The Prodigal Son, Crackhead to Jesus Freak. And it started with my late husband's story of being a crack addict and an alcoholic. And then he got sober. We met after he was sober, and he was sober for actually only a few months before, into our marriage. And then he relapsed into our marriage, which was hard. That's where we got like the police and all that stuff. And then he was sober for 9 years, became a pastor, and then relapsed at the end of his life. And the relapse was how we found the cancer. So that's the bare bones, like bullet points of the story. And the story opens with Miss Evans. This is Sergeant Jeremy Reed with the New Ulm Police Department. There's been an accident. And I knew alcohol was involved. I just had a feeling. So I had to deal with that. I was angry at him. But then 6 hours later, I got another call. Miss Evans, we found something on the CAT scan. You need to come in right away. And so when the doctor scanned him for broken bones, internal bleeding because of the accident, they also found stage 4 cancer. And that's what Jacalyn was talking about with my life. Just like, it just felt stranger than fiction. It's crazy, all the things that I had to deal with all at once. And somewhere along the way, Clint said, that's my late husband's name. He said, I want you to write my story. What are the chances that I'd be married to an author whose best work comes from wounds? I want you to interview me and write my story. So that was the motivation to write it. Was he wanted people to understand that addiction is not picky with who it chooses. Addiction can take anyone. And he wanted them to know that there was hope and light and life after battling shame and dealing with all those pieces of the addiction.
How wonderful that is, that he came from a place of love when he was going through so much and said, it's really not about me. It's about helping others and putting that story out there. So my question for you is, I always share with people, when someone shows you who they are, believe them. Because I know many times we try to fix someone, change someone. We think that we have this magic wand that's going to change everything. So going through what you went through, your husband shared with you that he had an addiction and this is what he was going through. And then he got clean, and that's when you met him, right? And so at what point did you say to yourself, I'm completely and totally all in, knowing what the situation is?
He relapsed 3 months into our marriage, 3 or 4 months. And It was alcohol and weed. And I was a good, clean Christian girl, and we were just married. So I didn't, divorce for me was not an option that early on. I, I was like, I'm going to stick this out. I'm going to make it work. I'm going to try to figure this out. And that may or may not have been the right choice. I'm not recommending that for everyone. But for me, I was like, I need to at least give this a chance. And along the way, I saw that God was working in Clint's life and changing him and working him. I did not try to change him. I did not try to fix him. I was ready to walk at one point. I'm like, I can't do this. I am done. And we actually had like this kind of like a miracle, for lack of a better word, that happened that saved our marriage. And I stayed. And then that was the moment that he chose to be sober. And he had gotten drunk September 16th, 2007. And he was so mad at himself for getting drunk after being clean for 4 months that he quit alcohol cold turkey. I'd never seen anything like that before. And that decision saved our marriage.
And again, thank you for sharing your personal details. I really do appreciate it, because we're here to help other people, right? That's what the point is. So as a man of religion, a man of God, leading others, he had not one, but I think 2 congregations. Is that right?
That's correct. It was a smaller town, so he had 2 churches in neighboring towns.
So he had people who were coming to the sermons and who were listening to him and who believed in him and maybe even looked up to him, were grateful. And then when the accident happened, things changed. Can you talk a little bit about that?
It definitely divided the community. It divided the churches. One of the churches in particular was divided down the middle, with people who were extending grace to Pastor Clint and people who are like, you broke my trust. You failed. I have no respect for you. I never want to come to listen to you preach again. People left the church. There was a lot going on during that time. And I was in conversation with the district superintendent and the bishop, who were in charge of his appointment. So we were working out those details. But there were church members that were emailing the district superintendent and the bishop, begging for Clint to be reinstated after the accident. And they had such grace and such love, like beyond any understanding. Like, please, we want our pastor back. Anyone can make a mistake. Anyone can fall. Can we please have Pastor Clint back? So he was reinstated. The accident happened September 30th, 2017, and he was reinstated the following January.
And as we're on the show, Iconic Women, what was going on with you, if you're open to share, during this time when he's now being reinstated? How are you feeling about it?
It was definitely an icon, but not not a positive one. I think I shared on that previous interview that I did with you that there were people who were talking about me behind my back and in front of me, and I didn't even know who they were. So I had gone to a local restaurant and I walked past a table of 2 elderly couples, so 2 older men and 2 older women. And when I walked past them, they stopped talking. And I knew they were talking about me. I knew they knew exactly who I was, even though I'd never met them and I didn't recognize them. So I was definitely an icon during that time, but not a positive one. And I didn't pay too much attention to how people thought of me because I was underwater. There was so much going on with my grief and all the details that I was dealing with that I didn't have a whole lot of time to worry about what other people thought. But I definitely felt that shame and the ridicule. And I was angry at my spouse for dragging me into his problem. Like, I didn't drink and drive. I didn't cause an accident. And by the way, no one was hurt or injured in that scene. But I was really mad at him for dragging me down with him, so to speak.
Thank you, Samantha. You know, that's such a poignant moment that you just mentioned. And I want everyone to imagine it, that there is Samantha and she's walking by this table. People are talking about her. And not everyone would have had the grace that you had. I know people who would absolutely just gone right over to the table and said, "Hey, who do you think you are?" And you don't know that people would have literally what I call jumped into the fire and started some controversy, which may or may not have been helpful. So you chose a different path. You chose to carry yourself with grace and dignity, which is what iconic women do. And so from there, dealing with the anger that you had towards your husband, right? In a situation that you had no control over, you weren't in the vehicle, you weren't driving. And so now he's reinstated. And some people I'm sure were still upset. Were you happy he was reinstated? And I know that you also, I believe you said you deliver services as well.
Yeah, so I was happy that he was reinstated. I was really inspired by the love of the church members who wanted him to come back and be his pastor. It felt like redemption in a lot of ways. And I was preaching at the time. So I was a stay-at-home mom and an author. And then when pastors go out of town, they call it pulpit supply and they need someone to come in and preach for them. So I was like taking up gigs like that, like little speaking gigs at different churches, filling in for pastors I knew who needed, to go somewhere or were going on vacation or whatever.
Sorry, I didn't leave you. I was trying to find your book. You were like, where is she? I'm trying to bring it. Here it is. So
I also have this.
There you go. There you go. We
This-
actually have your book here, which I want to bring up so that it's a little bit larger so that people know
Perfect.
what we're talking about. The Prodigal Son, Crackhead to Jesus Freak. So this is what we are talking about today. The title in and of itself just grabs you. It's amazing. So how did you come up with this is my first question. And then my second question is, was there judgment on you or did you hear of judgment based on the title?
I've gotten a lot of like, well, all right. Like people aren't really sure what to do with the title, honestly. The prodigal son came from Clint himself because he had prodigal and son tattooed to his forearms. And the pastor who officiated his celebration of life service also visited him in jail that night he was arrested. And in his sermon, he talked about wanting to lean over the table and write apostrophe S after prodigal on Clint's arm, because we are all prodigal children of a prodigal God who left heaven to come to earth to show us how much we are loved. And so that was where prodigal's son came from. And there's actually a picture in the back of the book. If you purchase the book, you'll see it there, where it shows, the prodigal son tattoo on his forearms. And then crackhead to Jesus freak is a little harder to explain. Not many people know what a cardboard testimony is, but a lot of churches will have a line of people who stand up in a row and they have these huge pieces of cardboard that are like 2 feet by 3 feet. And they have like a before Jesus and after Jesus. And you try to sum up your story in just a few words. So we are doing these cardboard testimonies for the community. And I was trying to fit his entire testimony on 2 sides of cardboard. And I'm a writer. I like to use a lot of words. So I was trying to narrow it down and I couldn't. And Clint came into the kitchen and he laughed at me. He was like, "Sam, what are you doing? Crackhead, Jesus freak." And he just simplified his story that much. And that was like during his sober years. That was, I want to say like 2009, 2010 that we did that cardboard testimony thing with the church. So the phrase crackhead, Jesus freak had just kind of become part of our lives. And it was in the back of my head. So when I was trying to think of a subtitle, that's what it was. It was his own words, crackhead, Jesus freak, just that simple.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And by the way, people can order your book where?
Amazon, barnesandnoble.com, walmart.com. It's on booksamillion.com as well. So there are a lot of places you can grab it.
Fantastic. We'll be showing that at the end of our program today. So when I think of iconic women, I think of courage, I think of authenticity, and I think of trailblazer. So we've covered the first two really, because obviously you've courage and you're very authentic. Do you see yourself as a trailblazer? And if so, what are you doing with that?
I do see myself as a trailblazer. When I first experienced my miscarriages, I think it was 2009. It was 2009. I experienced two miscarriages, and I looked online, and there wasn't a lot of books out there about miscarriage. So I ended up writing my own book about miscarriage, Love Letters to Miscarriage Moms. And it was one of the first books available for people. I've had thousands of women thank me for writing the story. And it was written in a similar style to The Prodigal Son, just very authentic, very vulnerable. I don't pull punches on different things because I wanted to validate the grief of women who'd experienced infant loss and stillbirth and infertility and things like that. So I've always had that personality. Like, if something's not there, if there's a need for something and it's not there, how can I fix that? How can I fill that need? How can I help people in that space? And honestly, there are not a ton of stories about addiction. There are some, but I didn't feel like there was a lot, especially from a spiritual point of view, because this is two Christians talking about, like, we're real. We really battled these sins. He battled the addiction piece, and I battled judgment and judgment toward him. And the book is written from my point of view and his point of view. So you have both of us sharing how we saw the situation we were in. And that's been really powerful. And I think I'm hoping because of this, there are more resources that become available to people. But I think it's a very unique book. I don't think there's a lot of other things like this on the market right now.
And I would agree with you. And again, you just shared something very personal that you took and made it about helping other people. So there's a lot of pressure when it comes to being in the public domain and when it comes to helping other people, because sometimes people reach out and they expect you to have the answers, or they expect you to make their pain go away. And that can be overwhelming. Have you had situations where people have reached out to you personally and said, can you help fix this? Or what would you do? Asking for your advice?
Yeah, I had a reel on TikTok that went viral, and I had tons of people, hundreds of people who were like, "Can you write my story for me? Can you help me write my story? Can you interview me?" I was like, I don't have enough time to do that for everyone. There's just not enough. There's not enough time. So I've been trying to encourage people the best that I can and give general writing tips and encouraging people to find people around them. When people come to me with a lot of hurt, I listen and I try to either give advice if I feel like that's what they need, or just be quiet and silent and let them vent. Because sometimes what I become is just a safe space for people to share what they experienced. I experienced something similar to what they did, so they know that they can share something with me. So a lot of times I'll have a conversation like that with someone and then walk away and say, okay, like, God, we're going to pray for this person together. And, we're going to try to, yeah, like, dear God, please be with this person. But then I have to let it go. I can't carry other people's burdens. I'm not built for that. And no one is.
No, and that's such a valid point that you brought up, and I think we should just spend a little time on it. You set a boundary. And to some people, because I teach people about setting boundaries, people get very upset about it. They get offended. But you have to ask yourself, if you are listening or watching right now and you're getting offended, what's coming up for you? Because it's really a reflection of whatever is going on with you. Because all we can do as public figures, even as educators, is that we can give you the space and grace to share whatever it is, but you will have to do the work. And so I feel like, Samantha, by you writing this book, you're putting a spotlight on addiction, also compassion and grace and empathy and courage and so many positives. So I think that is a big takeaway from what it is that you've written. So when you think about people who are out there today going through difficult situations, right, and looking for a miracle, which a miracle may come, right? Because if you believe in God or the universe or whatever you believe in, it may come. What would you share with them from your experience that could help them move into a place of positivity?
Sometimes circumstances have to change. Sometimes we have to be brave enough to change the circumstances. If Clint had not remained sober, I would have had to leave. And after that last accident, that last drunk driving accident, he remained sober for 20 months from diagnosis to death. He did not take a drop of alcohol again. But I told him at that time, I can't do another relapse. We have 3 children right now. He was a violent, angry drunk. And I can't go back there. I can't go back to that place. And I'm not bringing my children in. So the first thing you need to do is check your circumstances. And you need to be honest with yourself about whether or not you are enabling the addict in your life to continue hurting you or the people around you, and explore what it would mean to have good boundaries. Ask yourself, do I have good boundaries? Or in what ways am I breaking my boundaries? And then for those of you who are just doing the best you can and gripping hope for dear life, there is light at the end of the tunnel. I lived in the darkness for a couple of years. Everyone's story is different, but I survived. And I believe that you are strong enough to survive as well. I think you're stronger than you realize. You have more courage than you realize. And you're going to be able to handle this. You're going to be able to get through it. Just hold on tight and know that you are being prayed for.
Thank you so much for sharing that. And we're getting a number of comments from people on social media. Thank you for being here and for sharing. Samantha, through this journey and everything that you've experienced, it's had to have taken a toll on you in some way, whether it's physically, emotionally, etc. So if you're open to sharing maybe 1 or 2 things that have really changed about you through the course of this journey.
The first thing it did was exhaust me, deplete me, totally empty me of myself. The situation itself, the circumstances with living through the addiction and the relapse and the redemption piece, because it wasn't easy to walk toward that. And you'll read about that in the book. So the first thing it did was absolutely destroy me. And then losing my husband was hard. It was hard because I loved him. And I was also relieved that our battle was over. I was relieved that I didn't have to deal with the addiction anymore. I was relieved that we didn't have to do the chemo and the cancer piece anymore, because it was exhausting. And then there was this whole other piece where my identity was intertwined with his. We'd been married for 15 years. We had kids together. We had mutual friends, mutual family, mutual memories, a lot of, private jokes and personal memories that just the 2 of us shared. And suddenly I was the only person on earth that had those memories. So that was really hard. And I would say I was in overwhelming zombie-like grief for about 2 years before I started coming out of that. And I started writing The Prodigal Son about that time. I mean, during that time, I would, write a couple paragraphs and then set it down again. And I just did my best. But I think writing the book changed me because, like I said, I was writing it from my perspective, but then also my late husband's perspective. So I had to put myself in his head as an addict. And he told me how hard it was to stay sober and remain sober. But then going into his point of view to write that helped me to understand how truly difficult it is for addicts to remain sober. And it gave me grace for an addict grace for addicts overall that I didn't have before. So it changed my heart. Writing the story changed my heart.
That's so beautiful that you summed it up that way, that it changed your heart. And I just want to mention to anybody who is going through something that's negative, what we have a tendency to do when we're not working on ourselves, in my experience, is we start labeling. So when people go, oh, he's an addict, she's this. We're people, right? We're people first. And so to label someone in the context of a single time, whatever time that is in someone's life, to me, it seems limiting. Whereas we can look at the overall person themselves. And so you suffered a loss on many levels. And so what people might not realize is whatever had happened, whatever your husband did or didn't do, he was still your husband. He's still the father of your children. And so you were going through so many levels. If you think about people wearing like 5 layers of clothing, you had so many layers to your life and to your relationship that you had to deal with. And when he passed, I'm sure there must have been some unpacking to do that you may still be doing today. And maybe that book is helping you.
The book helped a little bit. I would say that overall it was not really a cathartic book to write because I had to dive into that darkness so often. I was just praying that I would be able to come out again. But I mean, there were so many pieces because I loved him and I was mad at him for the addiction. And I was honestly mad at him for having cancer. I was like, great, just one more thing we have to deal with, which I know makes no sense. But in my heart at the time, like I couldn't handle one more thing. The car accident caused, the drunk driving accident caused so much trauma afterward for myself, for the family, for the community. Like I was focused on that. And then it just felt like I got sideswiped with the cancer. Like there's so much to deal with. So when he passed away, I missed him because I loved him. And I was like, I felt relief. And I've talked to other widows who've experienced that same feeling where they miss their spouse. But the first feeling, that gut feeling is, it's done. We have an answer. We know how the story goes. There's actually a really beautiful scene at the end when I'm in the hospital with Clint. And it's just a true story. I sat down and I opened my laptop and I was sitting across from him and he said, so we should probably write out the order of worship for my service, right? I was like, yeah, if you want to. And so we sat down together and we planned this worship service like we'd done dozens of times throughout the years. And he planned his own celebration of life service while he was on his deathbed. It was pretty rough. But it also just felt like two old friends hanging out together, doing what they'd done for so long.
You know, as you were mentioning that, I just felt like the heaviness of it, like just trying to picture the two of you in that scenario doing that. It's like my eyes are filling up with tears. And I want people to know none of this is scripted, right? You have no idea what I'm going to ask you. And I have no idea what you're going to say.
And I haven't talked about some of these details before. So this is interesting. You're asking a lot of questions that are invoking different answers, revoking.
Well, thank you for going on the journey and for being participatory. I appreciate it. So the next thing that's coming up for me that I want to ask you about is in this journey of your life, okay, this took X number of years and obviously tons of emotions. I really feel like, in my opinion, nothing happens coincidentally. You were meant to go on this journey, right? And so the chapter is closed in terms of your husband isn't here, but you have children. And so how is it, if you're open to talking about it, how are they managing now in the aftermath?
Well, I remarried in 2023. So his name's Tim, and he's been a huge blessing to our family. The girls and I struggled at first. Those first couple of years, my oldest daughter even said at one point she felt like she lost both parents. Because I was grieving so much, I really was not good at being a mom. They were okay. We had a house, we had a roof over our head, there was food in the cabinets, but there were some days where it would be like 3:00 and I would be like, oh, maybe I should go make the kids lunch. And I just didn't have enough brain space to function. So we've grown a lot these last few years. They're such beautiful souls. They are really great at understanding when someone else is going through something. They know exactly what to say. They know that their experience is not like what other kids have experienced. So there are a lot of kids who will whine about petty, stupid things. And my kids are like, that's dumb. But they never try to one up or make kids feel bad about what they think are tough situations, even though my girls don't agree necessarily. And they're just making the most of life. They love and miss their dad, and they love their stepdad as well. So I feel like in a way, his presence protects them. Like we used to go out go out to eat at restaurants, and it would just be the four of us. And so when we started eating with Tim, it felt like we had our family again. Like we had a wholeness to us that we hadn't had for a long time. And the girls have, like I said, they've grown and they're doing really well. Like one's in ice skating, one's in gymnastics, one plays double bass. So they're doing their best to make the most of life.
I'm so happy to hear that. That's absolutely beautiful. I'd love to have you, if you're open to it, read from your book.
Okay. Which part?
How about something that, since we're closing out this show shortly, something that is teaching a lesson?
Okay, let me see. We did not talk about this.
No, and again, this is unscripted. This is live television, my friend. So
this is the first time I am doing this live.
So while you're doing that, what I'm going to share with our audience is we have a couple of links of where people can go to order your book and learn more. One of them for people listening on an audio only platform, it's loveunited.com.
Love unedited.
Oh, I'm sorry. Hello. I can't even read my own writing. So love unedited. Thank you. Loveunedited.com. Or you can go to Linktree, Love Sam Evans. So there's the information on the screen.
I have one thumb, like my thumb on one spot, and I was like,
all right. In the meantime, we want to thank Sherry Bennett for being with us. Sherry is a regular viewer on USA Global TV and Radio, and she writes, "Thank you for your courage. This is an important conversation." Thank you, Sherry.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. All right. I don't know if I can find, all right. So I have two. I'm going to do this. All right. Here's a sermon from Clint after the accident. I clenched the music stand. The congregation waited for me to speak. I don't deserve to be up here. I'd stop standing behind the pulpit and wearing my robe. Stop making this about you, God seemed to say. Are we going to preach my message or not? I lifted my head and opened my mouth. I've got to confess sometimes when I go home on Sundays after preaching, I imagine you sitting around the table with your family discussing my sermon, and I picture you saying, Pastor Clint's message was one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in his rambling, incoherent, irrational rhetoric was even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to his sermon. I award him no points, and may God have mercy on his soul. That was a quote from Billy Madison, by the way, in case you missed it. God bless you, Aaron, for laughing. Well, today I'm going to talk to you about something I understand better than most people in this room: addiction. Addicts have Stockholm Syndrome relationship with their vice. While we are indebted to our master, we can't serve the other. Drug addicts exist in a living hell. They are the walking dead, existing in a present tense hell, desperate for the drug they despise. Luke 8 shares the story of the demon-possessed man. Jesus speaks to the man, but the demon within the man replies instead. Not one demon. The demon introduces himself to Jesus as Legion, which is a battalion of 5,000 Roman soldiers. The demon-possessed man is a husk who doesn't even have a say in his own life. This story is not about addiction, yet I guarantee nearly every drug or alcohol addict who reads this passage would agree this story depicts what addiction feels like. Addiction consumes the addict, feeds off the addict like cancer. The addiction speaks for the addict. The addict is only a husk. According to a study performed by the National Institute of Health, 23 million Americans struggle with a drug or alcohol addiction. 40% of people have a family member or a close friend who is addicted to a substance. Almost half of us, and thanks to me, 100% of you have a personal relationship with an addict. I know you love your addict, whomever he or she might be. You do, but your addict has made you angry. Your addict has hurt you. And for some of you, your addict is me. Maybe your addict stole from you. She'll come over for Sunday lunch and keep her promise to be sober, because if she can endure 2 hours of sobriety, she'll have a chance to rob you. You're not inviting the person you love to brunch. You're inviting a puppet who no longer speaks for herself. The drugs do. Do you know why repentant addicts make the most radical Jesus followers? Because they already know what losing life means. They already know what slavery feels like. No place to lay your head? Check. Give up everything you own? Check. Nothing left to lose? Check. Despised by mother and father? Check, check. Redeemed addicts understand grace more deeply than anyone ever will. Their eager desire to follow Christ, regardless of cost, and their desperate gratitude for grace is the church's Christmas morning view of following Jesus. That's why God gives you addicts. Most of this world writes off ragamuffins. It's easier to feel closer to golly perfection by measuring ourselves against the dirty, homeless, and addicted. Clean robes rather than contrite hearts. And I'm about to call you out. If this is you, then you are no different than the first century Pharisees. This man consorts with tax collectors and sinners, prostitutes. When the religion of Christianity becomes our master, we idolize the goal to live an unblemished life. How is our idolatry of appearance any different from Jesus accusing Pharisees of being whitewashed tombs? When I'm out on the football field colliding helmets, sweating, bleeding, trying my best, and losing, you know who I don't want to hear advice from? The people on the bench. Don't sit there with your bleached white jersey and glossy, unscuffed helmet and tell me how to do it better. How many of you pay such close attention to a ball snap you understand what happens at the line of scrimmage? Few people understand the terminology I just used, and fewer can follow the football throughout the entire play when the offensive and defensive lines collide. But follow this. The ball is life, and it's your job to get the ball in the end zone. Addicts are the running backs buried beneath a mound of men, burden after burden, who experience more losses of yardage than gains. And too many people who claim to love like Christ sit on the sidelines with foam fingers, pointing, gawking, and saying, "What is that running back's problem?" Christian benchwarmers need to evacuate the stands and run interference. You're better than judgmental condemnation. You know better. Friends, I have 3 things to say to you. 1, it's easy to become a Pharisee. Guard your hearts against it. 2, what vice do you use to silence God's voice? Some addictions are easier to walk away from than others. Some addictions are easier to hide. You can't drink God under the table. I've tried. His plans and ideas for you will be waiting when you wake up. The 3rd thing I want to say is thank you. Thank you for seeing me. I would not have been reinstated without you running interference for me and calls and emails to the superintendent and bishop. God sent me behind the pulpit the first time, and you brought me home after I strayed back into the mire. See others like me, okay? They need you to.
Wow, what a sermon. Oh my gosh, that was so powerful. The analogies to football, unbelievable. And so did Clint share with you, did he channel God through when he wrote that, or was he writing that on, like, how did that work?
That was so it was part of our interview process. He did preach a sermon about addiction. So part of that was there, and every sermon he ever preached, he had a Billy Madison reference or like an Adam Sandler reference and a football reference. So he had that sermon on addiction. And then when I interviewed him, I asked him to fill in some gaps for me. And so he helped me write that sermon. But it was like a real sermon and then mixed with his input to help it turn into like a shorter book form, if that makes sense. Those are his real words. We had to like put it together a little bit like a puzzle.
Well, you did an outstanding job. I was really motivated, and people can reread that again in your book.
They can.
They can. Yeah. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned there. And I think one of them, I know we're coming to the end, we've actually over time for our show, but one of the things I think is really important to take away from this is the fact that we can believe in something, right? We can believe in a higher power. But when we are constantly quoting the Bible, like we've got a number of people are quoting the Bible, okay, that to me falls in the category of judgment, because you're basically using what someone else wrote at some other time to validate what it is that you think or feel. Just be yourself. Say how you feel and put it into a context that really resonates with who you represent and who you are. So Samantha, you have really detailed and chronicalized your journey so well. And so I don't think that people can actually understand the depth of emotion and where you have been and where you are today. If you have not walked in those shoes, you cannot imagine. So I give you so much credit for not only writing the book, okay, you wrote the book, but you're here bearing your soul. You have no idea what questions I'm going to ask, and you're still here and smiling. So I want to thank you for that. And I just want to close out with whatever you want to share with people, and then we'll bring up your website and your link tree.
Yeah, I mean, I would be honored for you to read the story and tell me what you think. It's changed a lot of people. A lot of people are thanking me for writing it. Oh my gosh, I needed this. I'm not even an addict, but I needed to read this story. So I think it's going to be a powerful story no matter what your backstory is. And I really honestly want to hear from readers and hear what they think. No matter what you're going through, just know that you are loved and you are worthy of love.
Absolutely fantastic way to close out the show. This has been a fantastic interview. Thank you. I want to bring up your Love Unedited. Here is your website, and we've been sharing the contact details here for the website. And so here is the book we're talking about today.
Perfect.
And then the other thing I want to share is there are a bunch of beautiful testimonials here. So you can read what others are saying. And by the way, you can purchase the book and you can share what you have to say. So here is the link tree that you can also go to where you can order the book, and also the website. Everything you need is right here. So thank you again for being here with us. Thank you for coming to see me personally. I really appreciate it after we did the Judgment show.
I like hanging out with you, Jacalyn. You're fun.
I like hanging with you too.
I was like, oh, I know the answer to this question. All right, I can do this.
Listen, it's not, I just go where the conversation goes, and I'm really moved, especially that sermon. That is unbelievable. It's so deep, and yet there's so many times to stop and think, okay, where am I in this? How am I showing up? Am I on the bench? Am I the one throwing the rocks? Am I the one casting judgment? Am I the one quoting Bible scripture? Your husband was in the clergy. He was a minister, right? A minister, priest, the minister.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's what he trained for. That's what he studied. And so for him to write that level, knowing where he had been and knowing that people wanted him to come back, and that's amazing. So thank you again. You're a very strong and brave, iconic woman.
Thank you so much for having me, Jacalyn. This has honestly been fun. I enjoyed our time.
Thank you very much. I will be in touch with you, and continued success to you. Bye for now.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for watching and for listening. I really do appreciate it. And I'd really like you to just take a moment, whatever is coming up for you, and think about how this interview, what you heard today, how it's impacting you. What is the impact that it's having on you? Because I know it has a huge impact on me. And I interviewed Samantha on December 31st. And now she shared some additional things. And it's really sitting with me in a lot of ways, because we're all on our own journey. And what I really feel is, let's give each other grace and compassion and respect, because none of us know where life's going to take us, or what the road ahead is going to be. So that being said, I want to close out today. Our next show is coming up. And so I want to go over to our sponsors, and selfishly, I'm going to be playing my single, which is called Please Listen to What I Have to Say. And you can purchase it over on Apple iTunes, or on Spotify, or on Amazon Music. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon.
Listen, babe, now. 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 Listen, babe, now.
Thank you, viewers and listeners of USA Global TV and Radio, for joining us today. We're honoured to have your time and attention as part of our global community. At USA Global TV and Radio, we believe in the power of authentic conversations, meaningful connections, and creating a world of possibilities together. Want to be part of something bigger? Join our team of elevated listeners at usaglobaltv.com, a space where your voice matters and your ability to listen transforms relationships. Stay connected with us across all our platforms for thought-provoking discussions, expert insights, and empowering stories. Subscribe to our channels at youtube.com/c/USA Global TV. Follow us on social media and explore the endless opportunities we're creating for growth, learning, and inspiration. Together, we're not just broadcasting, we're building bridges and changing lives one conversation at a time. For inquiries, contact us at info@usaglobaltv.com. Music by Johnny Dies. Produced by Executive Producer and Director Dr. Jacalyn Kerbeck. Voiceover by Mike Porter. Creative Direction by Paul Garcia. All rights reserved. Copyright 2025. Visit usaglobaltv.com to view our full terms and conditions.